name is Austin Stevens, and this is my colleague Angelica, and we are going to be giving our proposal for Coca-Cola. Today we will be discussing our research, or the purpose of our research, the secondary research, the findings, and recommendations. I will be discussing the purpose and research. I will be discussing the purpose of the research and the secondary research, while Angelica will be discussing the findings and recommendations. So the purpose of this research is that Coca-Cola has produced more than 110 billion bottles for single use in 2017 alone, which harms human health, animal health, and the environment. And they have been using plastic bottles since 1969, which is when they went away from using glass bottles because plastic was a cheaper option at that point in time, and have since stuck with that. But now companies across the board are feeling pressure from consumers to be more conscious of the environment, and because of this, sustainable programs have been initiated and proposed to help companies like Coca-Cola to become more environmentally conscious for the future and to help themselves with not only their view with consumers but for their view with the globe. So the first piece of research we have is one that discusses the recycling as an issue, where it discusses in 2016 the number of 100 billion single-use bottles were produced by Coca-Cola, and obviously this went up to 110 billion in 2017, but this just shows how it continues to build. And the bottling plants that produce these 100 billion bottles use over 300 billion gallons of water per year to just produce these, and it usually produces much less gallons per product. And Coca-Cola knows the benefits of the glass bottles that they did use in previous times, but it is something that they haven't moved towards yet. And the current system of wasteful recycling, which people are using right now, is simply because there's no incentive, or it is in big part due to the lack of incentive for people to recycle. Therefore, that's why there's so much waste of it. So the second piece of research we discussed microplastics, which are things that are found inside of plastic bottles, especially those used with multiple different types, whether it be soda pop or water. And the impact of these do not really have a safe limit because these bottles are not regulated by the FDA. So there are things such as, there are different particles, and a study done in New York by university found that 10 particles per liter were found in these bottles of these microplastics, and because there's not that much research on them, we don't know the health impacts of them since it's so new. As I discussed earlier, it was from 1969 they moved towards this plastic production, but these particles could do different things to our bodies that we just don't know yet. The image that you guys see is showing that 1 million bottles are bought every minute, yet 50,000 of them are not collected for recycling. And so they're just left around, another thing that goes into the incentive. The third piece that we have is discussing that there are 1,500 bottles consumed every second, and they contain things inside of the bottles such as bisphenol A and phthalates. And these obviously are the harmful parts that we don't know how bad they actually are for us. And in these bottles, they utilize fossil fuels to produce them. Therefore, just another thing using, increasing the carbon footprint, which you want to decrease, especially nowadays. And it's actually been found through this research that tap water is actually much more tested and looked into and more pure than actual bottled water in certain instances. And it takes 2 gallons of water to produce just 1 gallon of purified water for these bottled companies that do use purified water. And some brands actually do use tap, and they will have a public water source on those bottles. So you will see on there that they actually just use tap. So at least they're being more responsible for it. The fourth piece is that the fourth piece discusses polyethylene terephthalates, and these are the bottles that Coca-Cola moved towards in order to be more environmentally cautious. It's a cheaper option than glass bottles still, but there are less environmental issues with them because it has the label on them, and these bottles are used because they're more recyclable than the original bottles. And the CEO said that by 2030 they want to use these bottles to initiate a recover a bottle per bottle sold type of initiative, which a lot of different sustainable programs will have to be instilled to get even close to such a great claim, but it is something that the CEO actually wants to strive for. And they also discussed how diversifying the offerings was important to them, which is an interesting thing to see, as they were talking about that on the same level as water production, or as being more sustainable, which was interesting because they are still worried about profits, obviously, but the sustainability should be paramount and first overall, in my opinion. The next source discussed the history of the environmental effects of Coca-Cola, and it discussed a lot about India and England and how the water resources were depleted from the country, and they took 2.7 liters of water to produce 1 liter of product in the factories in England and India. Coca-Cola has addressed the waste management since this situation, but it is something that they are continuing to try to move towards, because if they are not controlling the waste management, then situations such as those in England and India can cause problems in purity of product and actual waste. You'll be finding much more plastic bottles here and there. The image that you guys see is the statement of working to retract the water usage. The next is a Coca-Cola article from Pestle, and it discusses how India, again, has had toxins in the bottles of their water that has caused cancer. And luckily this has been addressed since then, but it just shows that plastic bottles being anywhere and being used or people drinking products out of there can actually impact people in a very, very negative way, and especially the human health aspect. And the European Economic Commission came in 2008 to fix this, but who's to say that this can't happen in other global spots that utilize these bottles and drink, products that could be made by Coca-Cola and tarnish their image. But they have since introduced that bottle that I was discussing, which is 100% recyclable and uses 30% of plant material. It reduces 3 million gallons of gasoline that is used for bottle production. It is just a small stride, but as I was discussing earlier, it is a bottle initiative that was trying to move them towards what they wanted to do in 2030 per the CEO. And the image that you guys see is the plant bottle design. It's used with the Dasani in the PowerPoint, but as you guys can see, it has that label on there. And the last research we have is from Parley, which has partnered with multiple different brands, but they are worried about animal and human health as well as the environment. They discussed vortexes, which pretty much are whirlpools of 250,000 tons of plastic, and these are just in each ocean, and there's so much plastic that it's obviously washing up onto the shores of beaches, and this is where most people see plastic along the shorelines, and this is what Parley tries to pick up. But there is when the marine life consumes any of the plastic in these whirlpools, pretty much the seafood that we take, say fishers go out and are near the whirlpools, if the fish consume them, it makes the product toxic for us to consume, so it's harming our health and pretty much harming that entire chain that we have built for human consumption. And the image shows that 6.3 billion tons of waste have been generated, and 79% are in landfills or natural environments. So the themes from the research that we found were that water depletion for plastic bottle production disrupts irrigation systems and water availability, and we also found that plastic bottled water and products are not regulated by the FDA, which causes problems for human health, as people are not able to know what these microplastics may do. And we also found the problem with recycling that impacts the environment as a whole and along the food chain. Now I'll be passing it to Angelica for the findings and recommendations.
So Coca-Cola's production of plastic harms not only the environment, but also people and animals. So as we were talking earlier, the BPA and platelets are toxins in plastic water that are constantly entering our bodies. BPA is strongly linked to certain cancers, neurological difficulties, reduced fertility in women, premature labor, and more side effects. Platelets are endocrine disrupting chemicals linked to a wide range of developmental and reproductive effects. So they are pretty serious side effects that come with this. Sadly, people don't seem to be very concerned and are more concerned with convenience rather than the environment and our own bodies. And they need incentives to actually want to recycle and to want to make a change. Our competitors are also moving to sustainable packaging. For example, Pepsi has made great strides in food sustainability through their packaging, and they have 100% compostable packaging for their Sun Chips. They also have committed to cut water use by 20%, slash fuel by 25%, and cut electricity by 25%. So they're a big step ahead of Coca-Cola. So our recommendations, our biggest recommendation is to incentivize people with cash in exchange for their bottles. Some states actually have this already, and they're giving about 5 to 10 cents per bottle, which does add up, but no companies themselves are actually doing this. So we think that we should put deposit centers in or near grocery stores, convenience stores, or any place that is frequently visited, so that it's not out of the way for people to go and actually leave their bottles. Another thing is moving towards reusable, not just recyclable containers. So for example, glass bottles, they can be returned, cleaned, and then reused, and they have a much longer lifespan than plastic, which is just recycled. One more suggestion that is a little lower on our, prominent scale. So sponsoring and establishing accessible water bottle refill stations, specifically by Coca-Cola. And it gives the company opportunity to target a growing market of eco-conscious consumers that are starting to learn more about the problems with the company. Also, factory workers can be retrained to accommodate the use of reusable packaging and may open new opportunities for new employees. So in conclusion, plastic bottles harm the environment, people, animals, and even brand image. We discussed the harms of toxins in plastic bottles, Coca-Cola's use of resources, problems with recycling, and recommended paying consumers for recycling and moving towards reusable packaging. Thank you very much for your time and attention. We hope you consider our recommendations and are open to any